Now moving to the first story. In a statement issued Thursday on Current Affairs, the Government Communication Service said the attacks relaunched by the TPLF pushing against peace talks have further continued to intensify. As a result, the statement indicated innocent civilians are being killed, many are being displaced and property being destroyed. As it can be seen now, the duty of halting the terrorist group from its destructive activities has fallen on the government and people of Ethiopia. This is so because, the statement added, firstly, the terrorist group must be prevented from disturbing peace and destroying the country. Secondly, the government has a responsibility to ensure that humanitarian assistance is directed to the true intended beneficiaries of the Tigray region, and hence a conducive environment needs to be created to halt the diversion of assistance to combatants, as is being done by the TPLF. And thirdly, TPLF is punishing the people of Tigray through starvation by repeatedly launching attacks during the farming season, and the government has a responsibility to overturn this. Criticizing the international community, the statement expressed the government's observation in a situation where all the efforts made by the government for a peaceful alternative have been shunned, statements being made by various entities equalizing the government with a belligerent clique in both sides' rhetoric are not acceptable as they deviate from the reality. Therefore, the statement added, the posture of the defense forces remains one of defending the various attacks which have been launched from all directions together with the people. U.S. Senator Security Affairs Chair Mark Warner says the TPLF's latest reckless militarization and resumption of hostilities is deplorable. In his latest tweet, he said, although promising changes have been witnessed through the Ethiopian government's peace alternative, such as group and a humanitarian ceasefire, the renewed conflict has splashed cold water on every ray of hope. The senator reiterated that any act of blocking or obstructing citizens in different situations from getting help and basic services is not acceptable. He pointed out that the current conflict threatens the encouraging works that have been started and causes the people of Ethiopia to suffer unnecessarily. The 67-year-old senator has been working as the chair of the Senate Security Affairs Committee since January 2021. Moving on, the governments of Brazil and Japan have vowed to provide humanitarian aid to the displaced citizens in Ethiopia. Talking to ETV, the ambassadors of these two countries expressed concerns over the dire humanitarian situation in Ethiopia. Kasaun Chane reports.
The governments of Japan and Brazil expressed commitment to aid Ethiopia's humanitarian relief initiatives. The war in the north has and is still leaving countless internally displaced people in the states of Afar, Amhara, and Tigray.
I think Japan is one of the first countries in the international community to commit our financial assistance through international organizations for the IDPs, not only Tigray but also Afar and Amhara. We disbursed the money in the last year as well as this year, so that those organizations have been working in those northern Ethiopia through such organizations like IOM or UNICEF or WFP, ICRC. But also we are helping the Japanese NGOs who are working in these regions for the IDPs, such organizations like Good Neighbors Japan or World Vision Japan. They were in this area to help people, and the government is also helping these organizations' efforts.
Conflict and violence triggered over 5.1 million displacements within Ethiopia in 2021, tripled the number reported in 2020, and the highest figure recorded for any country in a given year, according to a new report from the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center. The cause of the staggering Ethiopian numbers are attacks against civilians, health facilities, and schools in Afar, Amhara, and Tigray. The ambassadors vowed to stand by the government and PGND's effort.
Well, Brazil normally directs all its efforts towards, those contributions for IDPs and other sorts of contributions in situations alike through the international channels, let's say, either the World Food Program or the High Commissioner for UN High Commissioner for Refugees. So, and Brazil is the 7th biggest contributor in the UN system. So what we do, our contributions are channeled through those specialized organizations that not only give aid here in Ethiopia, but in other parts of the world where it's needed as well. So our effort takes part through the international channels.
Ethiopia has been pleading with the international community to provide aid to internally displaced persons, IDPs in the Amhara, Afar and Tigray region states.
Unlike the rest of the world, Ethiopia rings in its new year, Enqutatash, on September 11 and not on January 1. This is because of Ethiopians' unique calendar, September or Meskaram in Amharic language, to be the first month of the year. Among the most fascinating practices of Ethiopians is a group of Ethiopian girls go around and performing a song called Abeba Yehosh. Abeba. ATV English will look into this in its news stories and news analysis. Happy New Year!
Each year's regrets are envelopes in which messages are found for the new year. The Ethiopian New Year stands before us like a chapter in a book waiting to be written and to be embraced for what's to unfold. ETV English will go with the New Year vibe, bringing you all the latest. Happy Ethiopian New Year!
Ethiopian cuisine is one of the most delicious and unique ones. People love it because it marries together earthly, spicy, tart, and sour flavors. While celebrating Ethiopian New Year, people love enjoying dorowet, the spicy chicken stew, which is usually served with hard-boiled eggs. We will bring you stories ranging from the New Year vibe to the culture itself.
Happy Ethiopian New Year!
Welcome back. You're still watching Addis News Hour. Now, the ending Ethiopian year of 2014 was eventful in that a number of developments unfolded, one of which was the 35th ordinary session of the AU Assembly held on February 5 and 6, 2022 in Addis Ababa. The summit was the first physical meeting after interruptions due to the coronavirus pandemic, and integration of regional blocks, food productivity and unconstitutional change of government were some of the pressing issues raised. Our staff reporter, Jerusalem Batsia, takes us back to the spirit of the summit. Have a listen to this.
On February 5 and 6, 2022, African leaders from across the continent gathered and discussed issues affecting the continent, mainly the pandemic and insecurity in the capital Addis. Strengthening resilience in nutrition and food security on African continent was the theme of the 35th African Union. Though its theme implies building resilience in nutrition and self-reliance in food, COVID-19 and security also top the agenda as coups and political instability continue to affect residents across Africa. While addressing leaders of the continent, Musa Faki Mohamed, the chairperson of the African Union, shared his concern about deteriorating security in Africa. He told members of the continental body that the AU has faced institutional failure because of coups and insurgencies.
The relationship of subsidiarity and complementarity between the regional economic communities and the continental organization. Beyond, however, to declare here and there that the decision of an organ of the AU, in this case the Peace and Security Council on Mali, should be dependent on the decisions of a regional organization, namely ECOWAS. There is really a big gap. It is important that our summit brings here the necessary clarification to avoid any detrimental drift to the functioning of our political and security architecture. The second problem, to consider the question of the sovereignty of states. This is a protective shield against all sorts of abuses occurring in a member country.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed came up with quite a grasping idea of establishing a continental media house to fight disinformation. He indicated that the establishment of such a media house will help African countries to provide authoritative news and information, fight disinformation, and promote the African collective agenda and strengthen Africa's voice across the world.
Africa is often portrayed in international media negatively. The endless representation of the continent troubled by civil wars, hunger, corruption, greed, disease, and poverty is demeaning and dehumanizing, and likely driven by a calculated strategy and agenda. This stereotypical and negative media representation of Africa not only disinforms the rest of the world about our continent, but also shapes the way we see ourselves as Africans. Telling our own stories and shaping our own narratives must be our top priority. In this regard, I would like to propose to this august body the establishment of an African Union Continental Media House.
Abiy also took the occasion to urge leaders to echo his request for Africa to get permanent representation at the United Nations Security Council.
Africa's voice on the world stage needs to be heard loud and clear. Africa must also be represented on important international bodies. Today, more than 7 decades after the creation of the United Nations, Africa remains a junior partner without meaningful input or role in the system of international governance. This is particularly true of the United Nations, where Africa lacks representation on the Security Council and is underrepresented in a variety of ways. It is the right time to reform and revitalize the United Nations system to reflect current global realities and ensure that it is a more representative and equitable body. Only fair representation and transparency in those institutions can usher in a just era in multilateralism.
Finally, participants of the 35th Extraordinary Summit of the African Union have named Senegal's leader Macky Sall as the new president of the AU.
Also, during the AU summit in the fast expiring Ethiopian year of 2014, the call by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for the establishment of a continental media was said to be commendable. Some participants of the AU summit approached by ATV said the stereotypical and negative media representation of Africa not only misinforms the rest of the world about the continent, but also shapes the way we see ourselves. They also say the continent needs to exert maximum efforts to get a permanent seat at the UN Security Council.
You know, the media is a major outlet for information diffusion, and people work with a lot of information. So if wrong information is diffused, it can cause a lot of confusion. So when we have a media platform that speaks for us, that speaks to us, it is going to be beneficial for the continent.
Media has a bigger role in shaping the perspectives, the opinions, the views. And so to the extent that the media is not well informed on, for example, issues that Africa are doing, will always be influenced by Western media. The media has a stronger way of shaping opinion. So I think we need also to engage further on issues of engaging with media.
It is important that now African Union should negotiate to have a permanent seat in the UN. It is timely because look at the population, look at the resources, look at the strategic importance of Africa as a continent. it is very important that we possibly consider and negotiate for a permanent seat in the UN. Because through that and through the challenges that we are facing in Africa, and given the problems that we are facing, it's important that we have a permanent seat that can be able to negotiate, to support, to ensure that the challenges that we are facing in Africa are being addressed by the African Union, are being addressed by the African leaders themselves. So I think it's a high time.
First of all, we need to communicate among ourselves. We have to have a unified vision for what we pretend to do when we have this seat in the Council. And most of all, we have to have a position that we can also be an answer for some of the problems of the globe. African countries have a say. So if you all work together in that idea, in that vision, I believe that we can make it.
Pan-Africanism says that we have common interests and we have to be united. This is what Pan-Africanism is all about. So Pan-Africanism is calling for the unification of Africa. So the key lies in the unification of the African continent. Let us speak with one voice. Nobody, no other continent will develop Africa for Africans. Africa can only be fully developed by Africans. Africa should speak to the world with one voice. We need common positions on all matters that are important for Africa.
In another recap story of the fast-ending Ethiopian year of 2014, the nation has planted over 25 billion tree seedlings in a 4-year period, hitting above the set goal for the Green Legacy Initiative. The year goes down in history as a milestone in that it was during this time that the nation's tree planting campaign hit a record high of 25 billion trees. The initiative was launched in 2019 to address various environmental challenges by promoting its tree planting campaign. Gushman has more on that.
The tree planting campaign, which took place in 4 rounds during the main rainy season, had a target to planting of 20 billion seedlings through public mobilization. Yet Ethiopia has already planted 25 billion seedlings in only 4 years of time, surpassing the state goal for the Green Legacy Initiative. Ethiopia made global headlines in July 2019 when it broke a world record by planting 350 million trees in a single day. This new record went against that of India, which planted more than 66 million trees with 12 hours in 2017 by mobilizing 1.5 million volunteers across the country. Ethiopia has achieved under the Green Legacy Initiative, which has been spreaded by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Accordingly, the Premier set a target of planting 20 billion seedlings during a period of 4 years.
The Green Legacy Initiative, I think, is a historic and very important initiative, I would say. As you know, Ethiopia is a hilly and mountainous country largely.
Of course, yes.
So it needs tree cover in order to reduce erosion, or in order to keep the water resource in place, so that they can really be useful for for any purpose, hydropower, irrigation, potable water industry. So in managing the water is very important, and it's also a very important economic resource. So having trees in your land, in your country, is like creating wealth and prosperity. And in fact, forestry as really as a development venture is the foundation of our prosperity.
Since then, Ethiopia has managed to plant more than 22 billion seedlings by mobilizing 20 million citizens across the nation. The initiative has become an annual tree planting campaign throughout the nation. It has therefore become a unique demonstration of a developing country taking the heed of the seriousness of climate change and creating a project that includes citizen involvement. Although Ethiopia contributed only an estimated 0.4% of the global greenhouse gas emission, it is still highly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. According to government figures, annually improving survival rate of around 80% of the newly planted tree seedlings. The initiative is ultimately contributing to the creation of new forest areas in Ethiopia.
I think the JLI was able to plant, I think, about 20 billion seedlings.
Yes.
Half of them are forest trees. So if you really look at how much area it can cover using the forest common forest standard, 2,500 trees occupy, of course, 1 hectare of land. So it is about 4 million hectares of Ethiopian land is now covered.
Yes.
But that means, of course, really, we are planting trees in different niches, in urban environment, in our backyards, on the streets, in rural environment, in different forms, But I think in the future, we can make it more systematic and more useful by, promoting, strategic interventions in our planting activities.
Ethiopia has been leading by example, taking regional leadership by sharing 1 billion seedlings with 6 neighboring countries, namely South Sudan, Sudan, Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, and Kenya.
Now moving to continental news in Sudan, a pro-democracy doctors union announced the death of a protester on Wednesday during demonstrations in the capital Khartoum. So far, 117 people have been killed as a result of the repression of anti-coup demonstrations that regularly denounce the October 25, 2021 putsch led by Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. We have been protesting since Burhan's coup last October, and we will continue to protest with determination and persistence to bring down the coup, despite killing of many people and thousands were wounded. But protesters insist on continuing the revolutionary path, said protester Abu Bakr Saleh. In early July, General Burhan announced the army would let civilians form a government on their own, but the main civilian bloc rejected the proposal, denouncing it as a tactical retreat to maintain the army's influence in the country. The protesters say there will be no negotiation or compromise with the military. According to the UN, 1 in 3 Sudanese need humanitarian aid in a country where inflation is so close to 200% every month. The currency is in free fall and the price of bread has increased tenfold since the coup.
ጉልበታችን ብረት አልነበረም፣ ጉልበታችን ትጥቅ አልነበረም፣ ጉልበታችን ኢትዮጵያዊነት ነበር።
እኛ ያለን አገራችን በክፉ የሚመለከታት እኛ ያለን ጥላሸት ሊቀባት የሚፈልግ ካለ በምን ታምር ሊታሰብ አይችልም።
የግድ መጥፋት የኃይል አልጠፋ ኢትዮጵያ ሰላም አታገኝ ብቻ ሳይሆን ከጀርባው የሚጋልቡትም አርፎ አይቀመጡ።
You have been watching Addis News Hour. Now a quick recap of the top stories. Terrorist TPLF continues vacillating between victim and victor. And Sudanese doctors announce death of a protester. Well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye-bye.